The welcome committee.
Nishan sighed, massaging his temples with his thumbs. He wondered why it took so long for some people to get ready on important days, especially his boyfriend, Zion, who consistently took at least 3 hours to prepare.
Although Nishan didn't mind Zion's meticulous routine, his family was eagerly awaiting their first meet and greet.
Nishan had been talking about Zion for weeks, and the anticipation was palpable. He pulled his phone from the back pocket of his coal-black dress pants and dialed Zion's number.
Hello? Zion's voice came through, calm and reassuring. Zion, where are you? The event started half an hour ago, and everyone is asking me where you are.
Nishan exclaimed, throwing his left hand up in exasperation. I'm in the car, driving there, Zion replied.
All right, see you soon. Bye.
Nishan smiled, despite the tension, and resumed watching the street, his hands tucked into his pockets. His Nutella-colored skin glowed beautifully under the moonlight as he waited for Zion's car. He heard the front door of his family home close behind him.
Where is this guy? We've never met him, and now he's late? Nishan's father said, sounding irritated.
Nishan turned to meet his father's chartreuse eyes, which mirrored his own. Zion is the nicest guy you'll meet, Dad.
Please, can you just be polite?
We want to make a good first impression, Nishan insisted, crossing his arms in a defensive stance. His dad sighed, a slight smile breaking through his initial frustration.
When did you become so protective of him? All right, I'll keep my composure. Thank you, Dad. Just remember to relax. Nishan went back to watching for the limousine, trying to push away his rising anxiety.
The front door swung open again, and Nishan heard his mother's voice, tinged with skepticism.
Are you sure this guy is even coming?
Mom, I know he is, Nishan said, adjusting his suit the color of a polar bear as he prepared for the potential confrontation.
Having a boyfriend was a big deal for Nishan, and he hoped to bridge the gap between his family and his relationship. You know, this guy makes me happier than I've ever been.
His mother shot him a skeptical glance.
I don't understand why you'd choose him. You're a handsome boy, you could have anyone. Can you please just accept me for who I am?
Nishan replied, growing frustrated. His mother clenched her fists. It's difficult, Nishan.
You're my only child and you're gay. That's not easy for me to handle. I didn't have to tell you, you know. Nishan reminded her. Maybe that would have been better for me. Our whole family is confused. Well, guess what? It took me a lot of courage to tell you I had a boyfriend, so just please, let me be. Nishan lowered his voice, trying to remain calm.
Yes, and it took me a lot of courage to express my feelings on the subject, she shot back, rolling her eyes. Nishan glared, frustration boiling over.
I'm still your son. Nothing about who I am has changed.
His mother's eyes widened in surprise, and she nodded slowly as if processing his words. Tears threatened to spill from her forest green eyes, but a small smile began to break through. I'm sorry, she said, voice softening as she stepped forward to hug him.
No, Mom, it's okay.
Nishan replied, surprised by the sudden shift in their conversation. I can't wait to meet him, she said, with a new gleam of hope in her eyes, before turning back toward the house.
Nishan exhaled deeply, relief washing over him.
Zion was a wonderful guy, he was sure his family would see that once they met. Now he just had to wait a little longer.
The door creaked open once again. Did your mom give you a hard time? His best friend Tanya asked as she approached him.
Not really, Nishan replied, still scanning the street for Zion. Tanya reached for his hand and gave it a reassuring squeeze. You know you can always reach out to me for relationship advice. We're still cousins, after all. I appreciate it, Tanya, Nishan said, nodding. I've been dating my boyfriend for a while now, so I'm like a pro at this, Tanya said with an exaggerated wink. By like 3 years, sure. I guess I'll give you that, Nishan teased back, a faint smile breaking through. But don't forget, you weren't dating until you were 16. That's true, she laughed lightly. Well, see you inside, okay? Yeah, I'm just waiting for Zion to arrive, Nishan replied before waving her off. Moments later, a sleek black limousine pulled up to the curb, and Nishan's face broke into a big grin as Zion stepped out. "Hey, Zion," he called out, raising his hand in greeting. Zion got out slowly, looking rather uncertain as he approached. "Oh gosh," Zion said, glancing at the imposing building.
"Do I really have to go in there? That place looks intimidating."
Nishan chuckled, turning to face the building as well.
"It's just a big gathering. My family needs to see the amazing person I've been talking about, so it's important that you're here." Zion took a deep breath, his nerves palpable. "What should I expect when we go in?"
He stepped closer, scanning the crowd of well-dressed guests that had begun to gather. Just a bunch of fancy people in suits and ties. "Some might be a little pretentious, but don't let that get to you," Nishan encouraged, placing a reassuring hand on Zion's shoulder. "Sounds like every stereotype of a rich gathering I've heard about," Zion lamented lightly.
"Pretty much. But you'll handle it,"
Nishan said, a bright smile on his face.
"Okay," Zion replied, inhaling deeply once more. For a moment, they stood silently, until Nishan suddenly offered his arm to Zion. "Here, gentlemen. Ready to impress? Maybe?"
Zion shrugged, his voice soft. Nishan shook his head and corrected him playfully.
"No, no, no. You have to say it confidently. Like this, I was born ready."
Zion looked into Nishan's eyes for a moment, then nodded, a smile returning to his face.
"Okay. I was born ready."
With that simple exchange, they took their first steps forward together, ready to face whatever awaited inside /. As Nishan and Zion approached the grand entrance of the building, the sounds of laughter and chatter floated through the large doors. The atmosphere buzzed with energy, and bright lights sparkled from chandeliers that hung down like stars. Nishan felt his heart race with anticipation, and he could see that Zion was equally apprehensive. "You'll do great," Nishan reassured him, giving his arm a gentle squeeze.
"Just be yourself. My family will love you."
As they stepped inside, the opulence of the venue enveloped them. Elegant decorations adorned the walls, and tables were covered with white linens and elegant centerpieces. Guests mingled in a sea of colorful suits and dresses, and the air smelled faintly of gourmet food and expensive cologne. Nishan's family was gathered near the entrance, his parents chatting animatedly with some relatives. As soon as Nishan entered, his father noticed him and waved him over.
"There you are.
We were starting to worry." "Sorry, Dad, we lost track of time," Nishan replied, trying to sound casual as he ushered Zion forward. "Everyone, this is Zion, my boyfriend," Nishan announced, confidence resonating in his voice. Zion awkwardly smiled, his hands fidgeting at his sides as he met the curious gazes of Nishan's family. Nishan noticed the glimmer of hesitation in Zion's eyes, and he offered a reassuring nod.
"Nice to meet you, Zion."
Nishan's mother greeted, stepping forward with an outstretched hand.
"I've heard so much about you." Zion shook her hand, his grip firm and warm. "It's nice to meet you too, Mrs. Rami."
"Please, call me Amina," she insisted, her smile genuine as she glanced between her son and Zion. "This event is so beautiful," Zion said, trying to ease the tension as he gestured to the lavish decor. Nishan's father, still sporting a mix of skepticism and intrigue, stepped closer. "What do you do, Zion?" he asked, eyeing him closely. Nishan held his breath, hoping for a smooth response. "I'm a graphic designer," Zion replied, his voice steady. "I work mainly on branding for startups and small businesses. It's fulfilling to help them create their identity." His father seemed to consider this for a moment, before nodding slowly. "That's good work. Creativity is important." Nishan's nerves eased a little, but he could sense that not everyone was convinced. He turned to Zion, who appeared to relax a bit, more engaged in the conversation with his mother and aunt. As the night progressed, the two of them navigated through small talk, compliments, and a few awkward moments with various family members. Nishan noticed that Zion was surprisingly adept at engaging with those around him, sharing laughter and anecdotes, and he couldn't help but feel proud. At one point, Nishan's cousin, Amir, approached them with a friendly grin.
"So, Zion, how did you and Nishan meet?"
Nishan chuckled slightly, remembering the circumstances of their meeting at the art gallery.
Ah, that's a fun story. We met at an art exhibit last year.
I was admiring a painting, and he commented on my terrible interpretation of modern art, he said, nudging Zion playfully.
Zion laughed, lifting his hands in mock defense. I had to protect art from his critiques. I'm still recovering from the shock.
As everyone around the table erupted in laughter, Nishan felt a wave of relief wash over him. It was working. Zion was absolutely captivating the family. The evening continued, and Nishan caught his mother glancing at him and Zion, her expression a mix of surprise and pride. It meant everything to him to see his boyfriend accepted. Just as he settled into the evening, his best friend Tanya came up to them, holding a plate piled high with gourmet appetizers. "You two look great together," she said, beaming at them.
"Feeling good, Zion?" "Definitely."
"Your family is warm and welcoming," Zion replied, looking genuinely impressed.
Tanya grinned, then turned to Nishan. "See? I told you he'd be a hit."
"Yeah, I was worried for nothing," Nishan admitted, feeling a burden lift off his shoulders. As they wandered to a quieter corner of the hall, Nishan glanced around, taking in the scene. The sound of music started to rise, and couples began to make their way to the dance floor.
Nishan turned back to Zion, who was gazing at the dance floor with a mix of admiration and timidity. "Do you want to dance?"
Nishan asked, surprising himself with the suggestion.
Zion hesitated, glancing down at his dress shoes. "I don't want to embarrass myself."
Nishan shrugged with an encouraging smile.
"Come on, we can just have fun. I'll lead. Just follow my steps." With a deep breath, Zion nodded.
As they approached the dance floor, the lights dimmed further, creating an intimate atmosphere. Nishan took Zion's hand, leading him to an open space where they could move freely. The music swelled, a soft, melodic tune that filled the air. Nishan found himself swaying gently, pulling Zion closer.
"Just relax," he whispered, glancing into Zion's eyes. "Focus on the music." After a moment of hesitation, Zion began to mirror Nishan's movements.
They settled into a rhythm, and Nishan couldn't help but smile as Zion began to relax, his body moving more confidently. The world outside faded away, and all that mattered was the connection they shared on that dance floor. Nishan grinned widely, feeling a surge of happiness as they twirled under the glow of lights, the evening becoming everything he had hoped for and more. Surrounded by family, support, and the brilliance of having Zion by his side, he couldn't have asked for a better night. As Nishan and Zion danced, the world around them melted into the background. Nishan felt a warmth spreading through him, fueled by the gentle music and the rhythm they created together.
Each step and sway brought them closer, the laughter and chatter of relatives fading away. "See? You're not half bad," Nishan said playfully, a wide grin on his face as he spun them around.
Zion chuckled, his cheeks flushed not just from the dancing but from the warmth of closeness and acceptance.
"I'll take that as a compliment." As the song transitioned to a more upbeat tempo, Nishan couldn't help but move even more energetically, encouraging Zion to join in.
With a little coaching, Zion pushed through his shyness and began to enjoy himself fully, laughing as he followed Nishan's lead. The atmosphere was electric, with guests spilling onto the dance floor, twirling and spinning in colorful dresses and sharp suits. Nishan felt a deep sense of belonging, and he glanced over at his family, who watched him and Zion with expressions that ranged from surprise to delight. As the song wound down, Nishan pulled Zion closer, letting the last few notes linger in the air. "I'm so glad you came tonight. You fit right in," he said softly, his heart swelling with pride. Suddenly, the DJ switched to a slow song, and guests began pairing off into meaningful dances. Nishan felt a pang of nervousness but quickly brushed it off. He swept Zion's hair back from his forehead. "Shall we?" Zion looked a little hesitant but nodded. "Okay, I'm game." They took a position on the dance floor once again, but this time the mood was much more intimate. With their hands resting on each other's waist and shoulder, they swayed gently to the music, eyes locked on one another. "Your family really seems to like you," Zion said, a hint of relief in his voice. "They do. It just took some time for them to understand me," Nishan replied, feeling a deeper connection with Zion as they continued to move.
But you've made it really easy for them to see the real you. I'm just grateful for the chance to meet them, Zion said, his voice barely above a whisper. I want to be part of your life, Nishan. I really do. Nishan's heart raced at those words. And you will be. I want you by my side through all this. The song began to fade out, but they lingered in the moment, both of them lost in each other's gaze. Just then, Nishan's mother approached, a wide smile on her face. Excuse me, young man, she said playfully, pulling Nishan away from Zion briefly. May I steal my son for a moment? Mom! Nishan protested, laughing as she twirled him away, clearly in great spirits. Zion watched as Nishan was briefly pulled into an embrace, feeling a little nervous but somewhat reassured by the positive energy. As Amina chatted away, Nishan looked back at Zion, his eyes communicating reassurance and love. As the night wore on, guests continued to enjoy themselves, sharing plates of elegant hors d'oeuvres and mingling. Nishan returned to Zion's side as the evening rolled towards its conclusion, jumping back into the spirited conversations as both of them blended seamlessly into the gathering. Nishan! Tanya called out, approaching with a glass of sparkling juice in hand. This night turned out to be way better than I expected. You should invite him to more events. Absolutely, Nishan beamed, glancing at Zion, who was now laughing with Nishan's cousin Amir. He's really great at breaking the ice. The night progressed, filled with laughter, stories, and joyful reconnecting. Nishan felt a sense of completion as the evening wound down, the atmosphere relaxed and familial. Finally, as the evening began to clear out and guests started making their way home, Nishan took Zion's hand, leading him outside. The moon hung low in the sky, and a gentle breeze rustled the branches lining the entrance. You did amazing tonight. I can't believe how well you meshed with my family, Nishan praised, glancing sidelong at Zion whose cheeks were still flushed. Thank you for being so supportive. It's easier than I thought it would be, Zion replied, a renewed confidence shining in his eyes. I told you. My family can be a handful, but they're good people at heart, Nishan said, squeezing Zion's hand. Zion smiled, looking more relaxed. I can see why you're so close to them. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, savoring the night air. Nishan felt a surge of affection and admiration for Zion, whose bravery and spirit had shone through that evening. Let's promise to keep sharing ourselves with each other, no matter what, Nishan suggested, his voice earnest. I want every part of you, your fears, your joys. All of it. Zion looked at him, eyes bright and sincere. Definitely. It's my turn to be honest, too. I care about you deeply, and I'm ready for this, for us. Nishan felt as if the world had opened up before him. Then here's to new beginnings and all the adventures ahead. Cheers to that, Zion replied, and the two leaned in for a soft, intertwining hug, feeling secure in the promise they had made that night. As they stood together, the starry sky overhead and the crickets chirping softly in the background, Nishan knew that this was just the beginning of many beautiful moments to come. With Zion by his side, he felt ready to face whatever life held in store, together.